Hi, everybody, it's Weird Wink Wilkinson laughing and scratching at you. How's everybody doing today? I got a little bit of a stiff neck. Let me just fix this up. Oh, that feels a lot better. Well, I got a great show for you today with some wonderful weird stuff. I feel so very weird.
There are some things in this world that go way beyond human understanding. Things that cannot be explained, things that most people don't want to know about. That is where we come in.
No human being would stack books like this.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, it looks like you're the one who needs to be taught a lesson, pal. Class is paying 101. The instructor's Casey Jones.
Look, I don't want to fight you.
Well, tough rocks, pal.
Do you want some coffee, Mr. Tully?
Do I? Yes, have some.
Yes, have some.
It's a cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
Hey, what do you say we both be independent together, huh?
I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said.
We have the tools, we have the talent.
It's Miller time.
Luminous being, so we, not this fruit factor.
Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Hey, these aren't my rules. Come to think of it, I don't have any rules.
Well, that's great. Either I have a monster in my kitchen or I'm completely crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
You know something? Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am insane.
Mm-hmm. Pizza dude's got 30 seconds.
Rise to the top, oh yeah.
That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Enough, I get the point.
You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
Sometimes happens, someone has to deal with it, and who are you gonna call?
It's showtime.
Strange. I don't know why it was muted. I've done how many of these now? Well, restream anyway. I've done maybe, 12 of these. It always mutes me during the video. It's almost like it didn't unmute me when the video was over. Anyway, let's just bring on ZHAO. He could save this. If anyone can, he could save it. How's it going?
Evening, everyone. Good. I'd just like to recommend to the chat, if that happens again, just send Pete a super chat that you can't hear him, and then he'll see it faster.
Oh, yeah, that's a good recommendation. Will I?
I think the higher the amount, the faster he'll see it.
Yeah, I think that logic follows.
$100 super chat, he'll get it like that.
Yeah. No, I don't know what happened. I know it mutes me when the video is playing, and I saw that it muted me when the video was playing, but usually it unmutes me when the video is done.
Yeah.
And this time it didn't, and I didn't catch it either. Oh boy. It's fitting. That's the kind of day. That's the kind of week it's been. We were talking last week on your show. All I've had is these weird occurrences of stupid mistakes and frustrating things and whatnot. Have you had a better week than me? No. Okay.
It's been the
Is
same
Mercury
thing.
in retrograde? Do you know?
I don't know. I think Satan is clearly messing with us.
Okay. Well, that could be. It's the month for that, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been working on cabinets, and I can't tell you how many times I've mismeasured things, and like the mystery half inch that appeared and it shouldn't.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And you're so certain. You're so certain, and then you got it, and you're like, "How did that happen?"
Yeah. Well, it's worse. They sell sheets of plywood, 4 by
Yeah.
8, right? So I split it down the middle. So each side should be 2 feet, 24 inches each, right? I found two I cut that were 24 and a half inches. So I was like, oh, crap. Then there's got to be some that are 23 and a half. Nope. None of them are 23 and a half.
Wow. Is that like a what is it? Hot dogs and then the buns come in packages of whatever in the hot dog. I haven't had a hot dog in so long. I forget what the math was, but they don't match up.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Apparently, I'm like Jesus with wood, where I increased the size by half an
Wow.
inch.
That must have been good for him where he was a carpenter.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. Have that ability.
Save a lot of money
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, that's got to be good. Corey says straight to Satan, getting right to the root of it.
That's right.
We could just blame all our problems on that, right? I mean,
I do. It makes it much easier.
I'm sure there's someone out there that'll argue against it, but most people probably wouldn't. They'll be like, "Yeah, that sounds right." Rex says,
"That's because they're a witch."
Plumbing and air unit issues here. Must be something going around. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if usually I do know if Mercury's in retrograde. That's the whole thing that I've convinced myself that is the ailments of everything to go wrong with not just technology, but any miscommunication that I have with anyone or myself. And that's supposed to be the thing. Like Mercury appears to be, for those that don't know what Mercury retrograde is, it's when Mercury appears to be moving backwards in the night sky because of its orbit. And due to that, there's fluctuations that occur since Mercury is a planet of communication, and that's the whole thing that goes down with you can't have technology that works right, and you're more uncoordinated, and there's more miscommunications between you and other people, and usually that seems to follow a pattern of truth in my life. But funny enough, though, I don't pay attention to any of that when I still have those things occur, and Mercury's not in retrograde. I'm just like, oh, well, I'm just an idiot at that point, or they're just an idiot, and everything else is not to do with that. It's an easy thing to blame, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the case right now. I know it happens several times a year. I was talking to you even before the show that I had been a little late because I had an update that just occurred out of nowhere on the computer. And even though I started the computer on 8:45, it was like 9:02 or something, and the computer was still doing the update. I was like, that is really convenient.
But that's not Mercury. That's just Microsoft.
Microsoft
They check your schedule. They'll check your electronic calendar, and they're like, oh, he's got something going on. Now's the time for that upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. They got their little eyeballs on everything. Why not?
There's probably some $100 upgrade that you could get that would make it actually.
Yeah, if I just send them super chats,
like
would that
2 a.m.
make them not do an upgrade?
Exactly.
Slip. That's the way it works, right? My uncle was always just slipping everybody a 20, and he just managed to do whatever he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do it. So you've got a project.
That's how life works.
Yeah.
I do.
You ever have an uncle that did that? That like they give you like a handshake and they go get yourself an ice cream, and they give you a 20, and I'm like, whoa, what kind of ice cream am I gonna get with this 20? And
I never had that, but my dad thinks rules don't apply to him because when he was young, he grew up in a communist country. So over there, you have to just do whatever you want to do if you want to eat, and so he carries that mentality on today, and he'll do all sorts of crazy things.
Like what?
Like when I was young, like the carnival would come to town. And I go on a ride, and he would talk to the guy. He would strike up a conversation with the guy running the ride, so I get more time and we get our money's worth out of those tickets. You do things like that. He's just like shown up to doctor's offices, be like, "Oh, I have this and that," and they're like, "You don't have an appointment for like 3 weeks." He's like, "Yeah, but I'm here now."
Would you say he was a charismatic fellow, or was he a touch of something else?
Both. He knows how to turn it on. He's worked in service industry most of his life. So he knows how to sweet talk people when he has to.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's very useful in many situations. I can see that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Have you inherited any of those traits?
I have in some instances. I'm not normally like that, but I can turn it on when I have to. So there's been like, trying to get business deals, and especially when I lived overseas, trying to talk people into things.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, you got to be careful with that kind of power. You want to use it sparingly.
Totally never used it for
Yeah.
evil. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
Not even
Good.
once.
It's important because there's a line. You don't want to cross that line. It's like Batman's
true.
no kill rule. It's just like that. Maybe you kill sometimes.
If it's more convenient.
Yeah. That's what's so interesting, I think, about Batman's kill rule, and people that will vehemently either be against it or for it, and the numerous instances where they're like, well, technically he didn't like outrightly kill that dude, he just didn't save him, or he didn't know that you strap a bomb to his chest and it explodes and the dude would probably die.
Yeah, and the question is, why have those situations never happened to the Joker? You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's one that nobody would ever possibly blame you for.
Yeah, he almost has like I guess you can maybe psychoanalyze it. He's got some kind of like a codependency thing going on with the Joker, where he feels like he needs to keep this guy around to point to and be like, he's crazier than me. I'm not so bad as long as this guy's around. And if he's not around,
Justifies his existence.
it kind of starts, making him look a little bit nuttier. Because it is strange. Like someone like the Joker, who is clearly not going to be rehabilitated at any point in time.
Yeah.
It's just, no one, just like, and they've done it in these stories that don't really matter, but little crick of the neck, and you're like, okay, you walk away, and you're like, I don't know who did that, whatever. Is Batman seriously? Does he have that lack of self-control where if he were to kill the Joker, that they would go, okay, Batman is now completely just loose. He's just on a killing spree. He's got the bloodlust now. He can't control himself. He's killed one. He will always kill from now on. He just can't tell anymore.
And then they show like a picture in Batman's mind, and everyone has a Joker face.
Yeah, like something snaps, and just he just decides, you know what, that killing thing, I got to do that again with everybody though. Jaywalking, he's just like snapping necks. Like,
he turns into the Punisher.
Like worse than the Punisher though. That's always the funny part when they're like, he doesn't obviously want to become what he's fighting, but there's a realm where for some of these characters, and obviously we know why they do it. They don't do it because it's a moral code. It's like if you kill the Joker, who's a very interesting and popular character, that's a stupid move. You want to keep that guy around. But it's the kind of thing where it really lessens Batman to make it like his morality is so completely fragile, where if he were to do that, he would feel like, oh no, that's it. I'm just as bad as he is. It's like, really though? I don't know about that.
Yeah, not until you hit like victim 1000, then you're.
Yeah, Alfred could be like,
and maybe you're getting
maybe we should talk about like moral gray areas here. This guy, you could make an exception with this guy. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's-
You'd think so, especially with Alfred. I mean, considering the different versions of Alfred, there's been a bunch where he was, in the military. He was like British SAS and all this kind of stuff. Are you telling me Alfred never off somebody?
Oh yeah, Alfred's probably killed dozens of people. That's the
Yeah.
crazy thing. So Alfred has more restraint when it comes to being discerning about who is worthy of dying in this scenario of combat or whatever it may be. But Batman is just like, no, man, I'd kill one, forget it. It's like Lay's potato chips here. Everyone is getting it.
I mean, yeah, he kind of sounds like an alcoholic who, can't even have one
If he
drink.
even smells the kill, he's just
Yeah.
he's loose. He winds up naked in the field somewhere in the morning, and he doesn't know what happened the night before. Yeah.
And his son's a homicidal maniac, but nope, not him.
Nope. Oh man. So in your situation here, similar to Batman's lack of alleged self restraint when it comes to killing and not killing, when it comes for you to create what you've created, do you feel like now there's a compulsion? Or do you think that you're going to end up creating more and more and more? Or do you think, I did it once, I don't think I'm going to do this again?
So are you asking me if I have a compulsion to create or to kill?
To create.
Just
To create. It's
create.
analogous
Okay,
to Batman's compulsion or lack thereof to kill.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have a sequel story / game planned, which is going to be bigger, more expansive, and kind of pick up where this one leaves off, or a couple years after, time wise. Definitely, I've mostly enjoyed the process. I don't know about the Kickstarter stuff. For anyone who has never done crowdfunding, when you're getting to the end of that month, you're kind of dragging because you've been everywhere trying to tell people like, hey, come buy this.
And at the end of it,
which you totally should.
End of it, like a month will go by, and you'll always have someone that goes, "Wait, you did a crowdfunder?"
Yeah, exactly.
Can I back this now? And you're like, it ended. And they're like, how did I not hear about this? And I can never be sure as to whether or not that's a convenient excuse or it's a legitimate thing that they truly did not see anything that you had posted in that month where you felt like, wow, everyone on earth must hate me right now because I've just talked about this so much.
Yeah, well, that's one reason why I've got Empire of the Undying Sun back on Kickstarter this month. I ran a Kickstarter for part of it last year, and I totally screwed it up. And there were a bunch of people who, after it was over, they were like, hey, I really want to back it. Where can I back it? Unfortunately, last year, for whatever reason, the late backer thing didn't work.
Oh,
so
no.
I couldn't do that.
Heck?
And then I had a website that I had an e-commerce store for it, but I didn't have it turned on when the Kickstarter was on because I didn't want people buying there. And so after it was over, I go to turn it on, the whole thing breaks, and I remember it was like 1 a.m, and I was like, "Screw it, I'll fix it in the morning." I wake up in the morning and I get an email from the company whose products I use to do the e-commerce stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we're out of business effective immediately."
Oh, what?
And I was like, "Mother." So one reason I have this one is Second Chance campaign for all the people who missed it. There's also last year, so there's a campaign guide, which is a setting that has a book that has settings, locations, stories, monsters. About 450 pages worth. But I had adventure modules as well. And these are like additional small stories or game sessions you could play. There's 12 of them, around 10 to 20 pages each. And I had it linked where you had to buy the print version of the campaign guide to get the adventure modules. Well, one thing I neglected to think about is at that price, it made it prohibitively expensive for people, especially in Europe and Australia. So for them, it would have been like $150 US instead of like 65. So this year I came back and I said, okay, I'm gonna have those separate. So anyone who missed it last year can do it. Can do it this
So
year.
last year, did that book fulfill, or is this like a last chance type campaign
This is
that's piggybacking with and
yeah.
combining the other one?
Yes, that. So the campaign guide is mostly done. Just a few revisions left to do on it, but I don't have all the art. And so, in addition to that, that was for the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition system. And I always wanted to make a version for the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 1E system, which I'm sure you saw a lot of when you were a kid. That's the one we all know. So I said, okay, now's the time to do it because all the images would be the same. So I'll combine the two, and whatever money I get is more money I have to spend on art. So when this ends, so theoretically you get the money 2 weeks after your Kickstarter closes. So then I'm placing a bunch of orders with artists to do all sorts of art, and then hopefully I'll have that at by the end of the year or early next year, and then we'll get everything ready to
Oh
print.
wow, okay. So and this is all or nothing, right? That's how everything works on Kickstarter.
Yes.
So right
It's
now
all or
you're
nothing.
11,820 with 133 backers on board, and you got 2 weeks left. I think
2
you're
weeks
going to
left.
reach the goal. But if you guys are interested in checking this out, if you want to back it, whatever that may be, you can go to the link. We've got it pinned to the top of the chat. At least it should be pinned to the top of the chat. I don't know anything anymore. I'm very disoriented now after being muted when I thought I wasn't. And we also have it in the description of the show. So if you want to check it out,
thank you.
go there. Is there anything that I know you've been on here before when you had this the first time and you were talking about it, but
Mhm.
there's so much on a campaign like this. Was there anything that you had wanted to touch upon specifically this time around?
Well, if you're into horror, this is a great book for you. It's got a lot of American style horror, as opposed to European or Asian. It's 450 pages. If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it takes you from levels 1 to 10 in the 5th edition. It has enough gameplay that you could probably play for years. And the way it's set up is that every time you would run this campaign, it's going to play differently. So a lot of times people say like, well, I buy this book once and I run it once and then that's it. But nope, I've got it arranged with suggestions. So, in one place you start in the woods in sort of a New Englandish type location. Other ways you could start would be like in a country that is somewhat like a mix of Mayans and Ottomans and Aztec, and it's got a god that demands blood sacrifices. So there's a lot of good modularity to it. And then there's also adventure modules. This is the first one that we have, Fairy Hill, written by a guy named Bill Sylvie, who he used to write modules for Gary Gygax, the founder of Dungeons and
wow.
Dragons. We got a great Pete Gilmore cover. Yeah, so the adventure modules I'm writing, there's going to be, 12 of them. I'm going to be writing about half, so about 6. And then I've got some other people, some ENnie award winners. The ENnies are sort of like the tabletop role-playing game awards. So I've got them to probably do about the other half.
So when you were coming up with this concept, around what time period was that? Was that recent or have you always been working on this?
For freaking ever. So
I'm sorry, but is there any more perfect an answer of that for that question?
So it sort of started out in 2017. I hadn't played any tabletop games in years and years, and I just got back into it. And a bunch of people in my group couldn't make it. It was right around Halloween, and I said, "Hey, I want to run a game, out of our normal game space." And so I ran what became the fourth chapter in this, and it was basically like a haunted house type story. And, pretty much everyone who runs through that is like, F that house. So after we played it, like people kept asking me things about it. Like I told them, no, you can't have a horse to go out into the woods to this house. And they're like, well, why not? And I was like, oh, well, it was that incident a few months back where most of the horses around here were eviscerated, and there's not many left, so they won't give you any. And they're like, what? And you're in the house, and you're supposed to get an item that's simply called the ingot. And things go horribly wrong, and people rise from the dead, and thousands of them, and try to kill you. And they would ask me like, well, what was the ingot for? What did that do? And it's, instead of saying it's a MacGuffin, I just started writing like little pieces of lore and backstory, even though it didn't matter. And then after a while, I said like, oh, this isn't a bad idea. And then I started using that as the basis for a comic book, which maybe one day I'll finally get around to writing the comic. But what happened is, when you have a fantasy world, you sort of need a story Bible, because it gets real confusing. Like, what's the captain of the guard's name? What's the name of that river?
You could
This
have
and
put that as like.
And then
Did you think about maybe having that as a comic in the book, like having the story Bible be like a comic introduction?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about it, but what happened is, as I was writing this Bible, I was like, I'll just turn this into a campaign guide. It'll be easy. And then 5 years later, I finally got around to doing a Kickstarter for it. But yeah, one day I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the comic, and it'll be super easy to write because I have all the history and the lore and everybody's name right in front of me.
Did you feel at some point like giving up, like stopping this, like saying, I don't know what to do with this, I think I should just end it, quit while I'm ahead? Or were you always feeling like you were close enough to finishing that you were already in the thick of it, you might as well just keep moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's times when I was sort of like mentally tired of certain parts of it. But I'm an idiot. So like I would just go to another part, and then I'd write like, 20 pages of history on some other event that happened, like 500 years ago. And so I kept like building backstory and, sort of the lore of this world that way. And then, come back and like, okay, now I'll work on this dungeon, or I'll create some more monsters and things like that. So there's a project like this is so big, there's always something to work on it. Like if you're kind of tired of King Cryptid, okay, maybe I'll go invent some new monsters, or, maybe I'll say what the Necros were doing 20 years ago or something. There's always something to do.
Yeah.
But giving up, I don't think so. The only hard choice was I started doing more and more of this campaign guide, and but like a lot of me really wanted to go back to the comic and work on the comic, but I said no. You got to finish what you start, because if I keep bouncing back and forth, I'll never finish either of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that makes it so tough in a situation like this, and that's kind of why I named the show what I named it, because it really is like this weird siren call to make stuff. It's like a very difficult thing to explain, and we all are creative in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to just be storytelling. And why we're compelled to create, why we're compelled to make something, especially something when it's not necessarily something that you actually need. It's not like you need a device or a tool or something so you can, get this thing accomplished or achieved or whatever. This isn't like a necessity is the mother of invention sort of a thing. This is almost like something
Mhm.
else. And the fact that we do this a lot to the point that massive industries, very powerful industries, have risen because of our compulsion to create, because something somewhere whispered in the back of your head, well, maybe you could make this thing. And then you ran with it. That is always a fascinating thing to me, because a lot of people, I think they've attempted to explain it about, making it this logical thing about why they wanted to do it or why they wanted to try it. But I don't think any of us truly know exactly why we're doing this, especially when it comes to creating any kind of fiction, any kind of stuff that's just made up, any kind of world, any kind of escapist thing. Because it's one thing for a user to escape into the thing you've created. It's another thing entirely, because when you create it, you're kind of escaping into it as well. So it's not just like an escapism that is only a one-way thing. So with you, with this,
Yeah.
was it very similar in terms of, like, did you feel like someone who was as much of a player as you were a creator? And then also, why did you specifically want to create something like this when, you could have created a million different things, a million different kinds of games, stories, whatever it is? Why specifically this, and why now?
That's a good question. So when I was in high school, I started writing comics and I started drawing and, would make stuff. But to be honest, they all sucked. And one of the reasons is I think just at that time, like I really didn't have a lot of life experience, and it's like you're just sort of copying things you see in movies or in other comic books or in books or something. And so, I think now, pushing 50, I have a lot more experience, and I think that I have a little more meat to put behind different story aspects, and I think that I can come up with an interesting slant for people who want to play this or who want to run it, where a lot of those one of the things that I wanted to do when I decided, like, okay, I'm gonna write this, is I wanted to make something that would be interesting to me as a player. Um, and I think that the way industry is going, I don't know if you saw the latest Dungeons and Dragons picture that is going around on Twitter.
No, every
It
time I've
looks
seen anything about Dungeons and Dragons in like the past 5 years, I'm just like, what is going on with that world? I'm not a player. I've never been into it, but I'm still always completely baffled and kind of agitated every time I see it. I can only imagine if I really cared about it. But what was the
let
latest
me
thing happening?
hang on one second. There's an image that they just released that looks suspiciously like 2017 comic book art.
Okay.
Give me 1 second here. And hide that window. And I'm talking to you somewhere. Sorry, I got too many tabs open. Okay. Yeah, if you could just
Want me to? Yeah, I'll
share my
it.
screen, you could. So that is the latest and this isn't like some fanfic or somebody doing their own art. This is actually from Wizards of the Coast, the company that owns the Dungeons and Dragons brand, a subsidiary of Hasbro. And first of all, why is it all pastel? This looks like Care Bears. That's number one. And then if you zoom in, it's just craziness.
Those two dudes are in love.
It's all, that's what this whole thing is. I don't think there's one straight couple in here. And even worse, sort of in the lower right, you have two kobolds, which are evil creatures that will easily kill you and rob
where
you
are they?
blind.
To the right of them?
Right next to the purple old ladies.
Okay.
And then right above them, you have an owl bear. So an owl bear is a creature that combines the strength of a bear with the intelligence and perception of an owl. So it's super deadly. Roams the forest and will,
He's
devour whatever
looking
it comes
real
across.
super deadly there.
Then you got the orange beholder, which is a creature of pure evil and shoots various
the
rays.
dude with the eyes?
Yeah.
He's pure evil?
They're and maniacal,
I could
and
see that.
they want to. Some of them want to rule the universe. We've got a sparkly dragon under the
Of
rainbow,
course.
and I mean, it's like what the hell
I
is
like
going on?
the bard doing like the Marty McFly thing.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
the dance there, the enchantment under the sea dance. Doing some Johnny Be Good.
So and
This
I
is like
saw this, and I was
Coachella,
like,
the role playing game.
when I saw this, I thought, I'm pretty sure I've seen X-Men issues that have the same artist.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, a lot of this kind of stuff where it looks like there's very little inking and
Effort.
yeah,
Yep.
it's kind of just like this fun high school project sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, you have that compared to this. This is another Peter Gilmore piece from Empire of the Undying Sun. Now look at all the detail and the effort. Like, would you want to play a game that looks like this or that looks like this? Like, this is something you play with your little sister when you're having a
Yeah,
tea
now
date.
this is always the question where and not to further belittle or anything this piece or the people who might play this, but that's always the question to me is what does appeal to more people, because I always would look at like what you had just compared, and I would look at yours and go, yeah, that appeals to me far more than this. But I wonder, am I an outlier? Am I not the majority? Maybe this is the majority. I always have to stand because especially nowadays where so much stuff looks like this, whether it's comics or,
Yeah.
anything, movies, TV, whatever. I always have to look at it and go, okay, this is the vast majority of stuff. The vast majority of stuff, in my estimation, for my taste level, is horrible and needs to stop. We have enough. That's how I feel. When I hear a modern song, when I see a modern movie, like a trailer or whatever, because I don't watch any modern movies anymore. But anytime anything like that pops up, I'm always like, we can just stop now. I think we have enough. And I always wonder though, is that just me? Because obviously it can't just be just me because it's everything right now looks like this. So it has to be somewhat popular. Otherwise,
No, I don't think so.
it doesn't make any sense. How could they further function? And I don't want to like dive into to more conspiratorial things as to how these kinds of companies are existing and how they derive their funding and all of that, but and I'm perfectly fine with this kind of stuff existing. That's kind of always been the case. You always have this kind of stuff existing, whatever
Mhm.
you want to classify this kind of stuff to be. Parody or lighthearted versions or whatever it may be. Even gay stuff and things like that. That's always existed. We've always had gay characters. We've always had gay
Yeah.
storylines and things like that. But it feels like now, a lot of people that say like get what is it? Get woke, get broke, or whatever. I don't
Mhm.
think anyone knows what woke is anymore. I mean, to me, I always thought woke
Yeah.
was just like a marketing term. And I always thought that it was more like you went broke, so now you're woke, is more like what the phrase should be. Because somewhere along the line, you lost the plot of how to speak to the audience that you had. You don't know how to create what they like anymore, and keep that fresh or keep the quality up or whatever it may be. And now you're like, okay, let's try to find a different audience. And in order to do that, you're going to have to really go extreme to find that audience, like you kind of have to do with just about anything. So you go all in on whatever it is you think that audience is, usually an audience that maybe didn't buy whatever it was before, or at least didn't buy it in droves. And you hit up your demographics department and you go right into it and say, okay, this is who we are now. And you really hope that that pays off, because if it doesn't, you already burnt the bridges of the previous existing audience. And you're
Yep.
hoping that the new one really, really likes what you're doing and that there's a lot of them. But it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense when it happens, and it feels like it happens far too often.
Oh, I sort of have to disagree with you. I think it makes perfect sense. Because if you're looking at who started doing these tabletop games, started with a company called TSR by people who played the games. They made a new game and were able to market and sell it. Who's running the company now? MBAs. And a lot of it's the same at, when Disney sends somebody to basically watch over Marvel. Are they sending some famous artist? Are they sending, did they get Jim Shooter? Do they get a publisher in some other industry? No, they get MBAs. And then nominally you've got like CB Sobalski running things, but how much does he really run? And that's the issue with here. You've got an MBA and he says, okay, I can either sell more or I can increase my revenue by cutting costs. And so you end up with art like this. And then they'll do, and I agree, they'll say things like, okay, well, what market have we not tapped? And they'll say like, okay, well, there's less women playing. So what do we do? Well, okay, we change it to having tea parties, and we change it to, pastel colors and stuff like
But
that. The problem is there were always women who
yeah,
played, but they liked it the way that it was. And the women who weren't playing, they're just not interested.
yeah. Well, it's like as if you took away. I don't know. This is the only thing that pops into my head at the moment. It's probably because it's the biggest women's league compared to the other leagues in sports. But it's like if you took away the
Mhm.
NBA and just said, "Here's the
Yeah.
WNBA," and just all the women now are what you have, and you don't have the men's league anymore. Do they
Yep.
have with this? Because again, admittedly, I don't follow this space. Do they still have
Mhm.
stuff that looks like your stuff?
There are some independent companies that are doing.
On the mainstream level, you're telling me on the mainstream level, it
Uh,
predominantly all looks like this?
if you're comparing it to the comics market, there are companies that are like Dark Horse size that are making good looking games. But Dungeons and Dragons is the biggest player. This is like
Yeah.
and Paizo. I don't want to say that they're this bad, but they're getting there, and that's sort of like the Marvel and DC of the gaming world. And it's not great. It's not great.
Wow. Yeah, because I would have thought that this just would have been a something that they offered, but not
Well,
necessarily predominantly what they offered.
yeah, and here's the thing. Here's the big problem. Um, Unlike, like let's say a Marvel, if you're doing X-Men, there's only one X-Men, right? So if you take a switch onto what kind of characters you have on there, or you say, well, it's not going to be a superhero thing, it's going to be a romance comic now. Like everybody's got to go in the same direction, right? Because there's only one person publishing it, only one person making it. With Dungeons and Dragons, you can have all sorts of different genres that people can play in because you've got a basic rule set and then you can deviate. So instead of making this like an optional module, which is fine because maybe there is some audience there that's really interested in this kind of stuff. They force it into the main channel, into the main rule books and everything. Um,
Right,
And then
maybe
it
I'm going to take this off
Mhm.
the screen before I have any
Oh, yeah.
lesser viewers than I already do. Um, what I have to, and I'm going to interrupt you, although I'm going to also apologize. So I don't know how sorry I am that I am interrupting, but either way, uh, I have to agree here with Comics for Life, right? So the art style isn't the issue. The push for only something like this is. I
Yeah.
usually feel that way with a lot of this stuff. It's
Mhm.
become dominant. There's all kinds of things that exist and always have, and
Yeah.
whether it appeals to you or it doesn't appeal to you, that's generally your choice, and you determine that. What I don't get though, specifically in the realm of this field, because every other field is kind of like telling you the story
Yeah, exactly.
in what you're doing and in what goes on in Dungeons and Dragons and games like it. You guys are relatively the people that control what happens in the world. You're the storyteller,
Yep.
right? And you basically like customize the character and personalities and all that kind of stuff. So I don't understand, and maybe this is probably entirely my fault, but I don't understand why there's so much dedicated to giving you the characterization and things like that when the player is the one that would determine that.
Uh, yes and no. So there is a certain amount of like when you're running a game, it's up to you to set the stage. So it's up to you to determine how the world works. There are NPCs, non-player characters that should act in certain ways, and so it's up to you to kind of do that. And I think part of it is a lot of the audience has aged up, especially so the last version of Dungeons and Dragons that came out was 2014. They re-released another one last year, but it's almost the same thing, but with worse rule set. But the people who started playing in 2014, if you start playing on average like 13, 14 years old, those people are in their 20s now. Well, they have jobs. Some of them are probably married. Maybe they got kids. So you don't have that same amount of time as you did when you were a kid to just sit around creating stories. So you'll buy something like Empire of the Undying Sun, where a lot of that stuff is done for you. So, like with my book, you could just get it like 20, 30 minutes before, quickly read over what's going on. You know what to do. You know what monsters your players will encounter and whatnot. So it makes it easier. So that's why you used to have a lot of different modules. You had Oriental Nights, which had East Asian theme adventures. You had I can't remember the name. It's not Arabian Nights, but it was something like that with Arabian medieval settings, and they would have all sorts of these different kind of modules, so you could sort of play with whatever flavor you want.
Mhm.
But for some reason, like this is all that they're putting out now. And like, I don't know, the sales numbers have been abysmal for the people who have been keeping track of Hasbro and their stock. Like Wizards of the Coast keeps losing money. They fired most of their art staff. They fired most of their creative staff. They've flat out said they're going to use AI to generate modules. Why specifically they would do these kind of modules, which even if you're going to use AI slop, like
Yeah, I was
this would
gonna
be
say that
less
was gonna be my
interesting.
next thing, was saying that of any company in a creative field, I feel like Wizards of the Coast is gonna go full tilt AI.
Yeah.
It just
Oh,
so
yeah.
much of their stuff over the years has kind of looked like whatever AI stuff looks like today. But then on top of that, like they keep doing the cost cutting maneuvers and
Yeah.
more and
Well,
more relegating storytelling into this kind of weird, soppy middle ground that doesn't seem to be engaging in the way that it was before.
yeah. Well, do you know why AI art looks like the stuff that they put out?
Are they funneling a lot of their stuff into like
It's
the AI server type things?
the AI companies were funneling a lot of their stuff. So I had a guy on my channel a few times, Richard Witters. He was the art director for. He has been for both Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. So that whole art style that they set in 2014 for D&D 5th edition, all of that was slurped up by AI. So if if you try to generate a lot of computer art, it's going to look exactly like that.
So that's why it
So
all kind of looks like that digital painted sort of
sure.
second-rate fantasy stuff.
And if you had no artistic talent or desire to know anything about art, and all you cared about was pinching pennies, and you would look at that and you would say, well, AI does, it looks exactly like our stuff. We'll just use AI.
Man, it seems really strange because obviously corporations and studios and whatnot, they've been involved in the creativity realm for a long time. A lot of the stuff that we love came from stuff like that. But somewhere along the line, it really seems like a generation died off.
Yep.
And the new generation that came in, like you said, is these MBA type people, and they don't really have the connection to the creativity. They don't really even understand maybe why the stuff that became iconic, why it did, what appeal it has, and they just seem to mine it for whatever sentimental value it has among people until the thing is just like a zombie of what it
Sure.
was. And it seems like that's happening across the board with
Yep.
everything. And for the life of me, I can't wrap my head around why we're still stuck in this pattern with everything, whether it's comics, games, movies, whatever, where it feels like there's some stuff that you can look at and go, okay, if someone with the right vision or editing could go in there and provide direction, this could be really good. But because that doesn't seem to be happening, or because those people have been forced out of the industry for whatever reason,
Yep.
whether it's because, they hurt too many feelings or they're not PC enough, because that's what a lot of this stuff is with like woke crap. It
Yep.
reminds me of the PC madness of the 90s,
Yeah.
where everything became about, and this is always the funny part when people scream about representation and stuff like that. And then they go in and they're like, yeah, we're going to change that male character and put him female. And we're going to make that white character black. And we're going to make that straight character gay. And it's like, but representation? If representation at the heart of it is about being authentic to the creation of the character and the story, then you don't do stuff like that. And if you want something that's different, you create something new that's different, which is pretty much what was done for a long time, which is why we have the plethora of characters and stories that we do. If we just kept taking like one character, imagine, okay, you create one character, one story, and then forever we don't make anything new. We just keep changing the gender or the sex or the race or the age or whatever of that character or the characters in that story and say that that's it. That's all we got. We got the one story and we only have so many ways we can mix them up,
Mhm.
and that's all we're going to do for forever. I can't I can't imagine the madness behind that thought. But yet meanwhile that's what we have constantly going on. We don't have on the mainstream level, on the big corporate creative level. We don't have that anymore where they go, let's just make some new stuff. Instead, it's like, no, let's take the pre-existing thing, slap a new paint coat on it, and go, yeah, this is the thing now. And if you question it, you're getting told still, well, you don't like XYZ type person or whatever it may be. And instead, all the responses are usually like, no, I don't mind those people. It's just this character and this story is not that. Why can't that kind of character or story be created anew? And I can't, just to go on a crazy tangent here. I just still can't wrap my head around how we've been stuck in this. This is a conversation now that's been going on for like over 10 years
Yeah.
because this is the stuff that's still happening. This kind of stuff would have been like to go back to the PC 90s. It was like a 5-year maximum period, and it was largely made fun of by creative
Yeah.
industries. Like it was usually like the brunt of jokes of going way too literal, because that's what so much of this is. It's just people taking things to like some crazy literal, out of context kind of conclusion. And instead, like we're full still in this for like 10 years now with no end in sight. And I don't know
Mm.
what's going to end it, and I don't know if it ever even will end, because it just seems like corporate mainstream is this, and it's so just detached from everything else. And yet people still kind of support it, or like they make excuses for it. So I don't know, but what are your thoughts on that whole entire word salad I just gave you?
Uh, well, making excuses for it, I 100% agree with that. But I think part of it is the wrong people are in control. Like if we take a look at Hollywood in the movie industry, in the early years, really up through the 60s, people who were in charge of studios loved movies. They loved watching movies. They were happy to fund movies. And they had a lot of weird things going on with the studio system, but they were generally people who loved the medium itself. Um, to an extent, you had that with comics. I mean, there's always been like malfeasance in ownership stories, like with Timely Comics, and
That's like
they
every business, top to bottom. I love when people just kind of attribute it to like, oh, it's like old Hollywood, or like that's old, the comics and the mafia run this and that. It's like, guys, every business, every government,
yeah,
every organization ever in time immemorial has been that way. But at
yeah.
least a lot of it was, you look at it and go, they did make some good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, well, that's the thing. But now we're so far removed from the people who really hone their craft, right? Like in the movies, you could make arguments that even people through the 90s and maybe very early 2000s, there were still enough people left over from that system that really understood how to make a good movie. So even if it was like kind of a meh story and the actors weren't so great, the movie now, if you watch it compared to modern stuff, looks amazing. Just a simple like mystery story or something from the 90s. And we had that we had that through at least the 90s in comics, kind of that generation of the Image guys, and like shortly after, they were the last big cohort who really knew how to put together books and make good stories. And then it all kind of fell apart. And part of that is because you've got the bean counters who they don't know anything about anything and they don't care about comics. All they potentially want is like the fame of having worked on an IP that people know of. And it's a big problem because they hire incompetent people because they're cheap. And a bunch of those people have wormed their way into the industry and gotten their friends jobs who are also incompetent and don't care about comics. And so here we are. And now even if you took over Marvel tomorrow, how many years would you have to spend weeding all those people out, training new people? So it's not even a simple case of they're just hiring the wrong people. You need
Do
to
you think
train people a certain way to do the job the way that needs to be done, and there's no one left to do it.
Do you think a big part of what has happened with this in terms of creativity going to crap is we've become such a litigious society? Like
Mm.
that people are maybe afraid of firing a mass amount of people because they think they're going to get a blowback or get sued or whatever, because you're saying like it would take such a long time to weed out Marvel. If I went into Marvel today, I would say, give me the sales reports from the past year. I would look at the top selling titles and say the top 20 we're keeping, everybody else is gone.
Yeah.
And that's
Uh,
it.
it should be
And
that easy.
and look at the creative teams involved of the people who are going to be cut, and make a judgment call as to whether or not we keep them on the quote unquote bullpen, or maybe we elevate them because you're like, you know what, this person would thrive better if they
Mhm.
were given this book, this character, this genre instead of what they were working on. Because maybe that artist is great, but the writer was bad, or that writer was great, but the artist was bad. And it wouldn't be too difficult to make that decision. But then, of course, comes the blowback of people being like, you canceled this, you fired that, and if you don't
Yeah.
have someone that's above you that's going to stand by that decision that you're making, because that's the biggest problem is there's so much bloat. There's so many of just to stick to comics. There's so much bloat among the catalog and among the titles that it's actually really watering down everything and causing this kind of confusion and stuff that doesn't matter. I mean, I go to a local comic shop, 50-cent bins, the vast majority of stuff from the past 10 years
Yep.
in 50-cent bins. And when I go through them, I largely go to the stuff that you could tell at the top is newsprint. But every now and then I'll still just look through what else is relatively new that's in the 50-cent bin, just hoping maybe even something catches my attention. And I'm seeing titles that don't make any sense to me, stuff that just doesn't look good, stuff that looks very like you can't tell what the hell the story is from the cover. And I'm just wondering constantly when I look through this stuff, where did it all go to crap? Because it just seems like there's so much, there's such a glut. And we live in a time where there's not a lot of comic shops.
Yep.
There's less, or at least there appears to be less comic readers than there were like 30 years ago. But maybe they've just been so diluted that they're so spread out that instead it's almost like comic book diaspora, where like they've been so spread everywhere that it looks like there's not a lot of comic readers. But if they only had 2 or 3 titles to read of that kind of character instead of 25, they
Yep.
would be condensed more towards reading this. You'd have a higher quality team on those 2 or 3 titles, and you would have a shared cultural experience among the consumer base, because you'd have everyone reading that same kind of book, talking about that same kind of book. And you'd also have their print numbers and their sales numbers a lot higher because you'd be condensing the readership, which also means then you lower from the economy of scale what it costs to print, what it costs to produce. You don't have to worry about overhead of all these bloated creative teams anymore making subpar stuff that doesn't matter, quite frankly. And then you also can then sell advertising at a higher rate because your print run is so much higher. And that's what they used to do. It's not something revelatory. That's how that industry was run. And now it's run in a weird way that's just about grabbing market share to what looks like a desperate attempt at keeping other stories and other kinds of competitors off of the shelf. And they don't care. It's a lot easier to say, yeah, let's just throw garbage at the shelf. The retailer's going to buy it over whoever the hell else makes whatever they make. And that's what's going to take that spot instead of worrying about someone else coming up and becoming a competitor.
Yep.
And that mindset has damaged the market, damaged the brands, and created like this weird flux of real shitty storytelling and bad quality across the board, instead of it looking like, and there's some very talented people still in the mainstream.
Yeah.
But instead of it predominantly, that's what you see. Like there was a time when it looked like all you saw at Marvel was who went on to create Image.
Yeah.
And that's a mountain of talent to look at that. And that's what you see like practically every month. It looks like who's creating their stuff is top level, mind-blowing talent. But if you were to still have those guys and then fill in like another 70 titles every month with people who look like they're just fresh out of high school, you're going to look at the company and go, I don't think they're doing that great. But meanwhile, they got some true gems in there. So it's like the whole thing makes no sense to me whatsoever. And like I said, I can't wrap my head fully around how we arrived at this, other than someone wants it this way, and that's clear. And I don't know how we get out of it.
Yeah, getting out of it's tough. I mean, getting back to bean counters, it's like, you've got the people running these companies, and they all have bosses, and their bosses sure as hell don't know what's going on. So if they can say like, "Look, we have X amount of market share," their bosses, "Oh, that's fantastic." Meanwhile, not looking at the market itself is shrinking more and more due to this poor quality. How many people jumped ship and went to manga, and who can blame them?
Yeah.
You want a good story. Now the only problem is Japan is 10 years behind the US culturally at all times. So that means they're starting to go through the nonsense we went through in 2015. So
Do they have to, though? Do they really have to go through that? They can't just look at it and go, yeah, that didn't really work so well for them. That's the reason we got such a boost during that time period.
maybe, but so far they haven't bucked the trend.
Man.
Enjoy the manga while you can, guys.
So
But
strange.
and where does it go after that? I don't know. How are these comic stores going to stay in business? Well, I mean, you're not going to have any more purely comic stores. They're all already selling Funko Pops and merging with game stores and all that other kind of stuff. So that's a problem because it's not the same culture. I somebody was showing like a display rack of DC comics at some gas station, I thought, which was cool. Although I just wonder, do kids go into gas stations anymore?
Was it a gas station or was it the ones at Dollar Tree?
It seemed to be a gas station.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure which one, but
sometimes Dollar Trees could look like gas stations. Yeah, because all I've seen with DC is their cardboard displays that they have with the pockets, and they got like the polybag $1.25 comics, which also I think is such a they're $1.25 comics. I don't know why they need to be polybagged. the $5 comics at the comic shops aren't. And they're new issues, because usually the reason you polybag is because you have multiple issues in a bag, which they don't. It's just one. And then the other reason you polybag is when at the retail level is when the barcode's going to be different. So instead of stickering, like re-stickering all the books, which is a big no-no for comics, you'd put them in the bag, and then they scan the bag, and the bag has the correct pricing with the UPC, and the comic has a different one. So if they were either old inventory being polybagged, that'd be one thing. Or if they were like a 5-pack being polybagged, that'd be one thing. Or even a 3-pack. But instead, they're like a complete reprinting of like the Rebirth line and a bunch of other different kinds of titles. And I can't gauge the rhyme or reason a lot of the time. Like DC always conceptually, I find that it's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Get them into Dollar Tree. Perfect. Beautiful amount of distribution. That's a perfect place to be in. And then what they do and what they put in the execution is it's so bad. I don't get it. I'm looking at, I'm like, Rebirth is in here, the Rebirth line. That's really what you guys are going to go with. You're not going to go with something that's a little bit more like DC Essentials when you had that, the important evergreen titles. And you're not going to go with like classic reprints of stories, and you're not also going to go with just plain old putting, the 3-pack or whatever in a poly bag of an assortment of overstock that you have from the years of comics that feel like they matter to people. Instead, they're going to be blasted with like the $1.25 circle on the cover, and it's going to feel like bargain basement comics, and it's of a reprint line that like no one gives a crap about, full of stuff that's old and irrelevant at this point, and not old and classic, which is what you would really want at that level. It's such a shame. It's such a shame because it's a tough place to get into, and it's a lot of money and time to invest in the way that they have it set up. They would have been way better just putting comics in there and say, just put these in at the register spot, or put these in with the coloring books and things like that they have over there. Just put those in that, and don't worry about it. Don't polybag it, because at least you'll get like the looky-loo kids who will flip open a comic. Maybe they don't buy it. Maybe the thing gets trashed, whatever. But it's a loss leader to try to get a new audience.
Exactly.
And it's I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things like that. And, I was thinking the other day, do you remember G.I. Joe comics in the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember how they used to have TV commercials for it every month?
Yeah.
So at some point, if they actually are serious about the industry and their business and they want to increase readership, they've got to start doing marketing. I don't know where kids are to market. I don't know if it's YouTube videos. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's Bluey is still a thing or whatever. But they're going to have to start putting comics in front of kids. And like, let's say you got a new X-Men cartoon coming out. You do a commercial for it and say like, hey, every month, go to your wherever to go buy X-Men comics.
Yeah, the synergy in the 90s was incredible between the toys,
Yeah.
the comics, the shows, all of that. It was so on point. The trading cards, it was like that sweet spot between 90 to like 94, 95, where it just seemed like they got it. They did everything right. And then they took such advantage of doing everything right that they went all in and doubled down on being greedy about it.
Yep.
And then it completely just turned the industry upside down. But yeah, you got to do stuff like that. If anything, I would think that would be, I mean, Warner Brothers has owned, and they're owned by Discovery, I think, at this point, but they've owned DC for a long time. But that should be the same thing with Disney owning Marvel. That should be the reason why you end up going into that agreement, is that they give you wider distribution, better promotion, better marketing, all that kind of stuff. And it just seems like one hand is not washing the other, and it hasn't been that way for a while. And unfortunately, they are still like the tent poles of the comic industry.
Yeah.
And if they were doing a whole hell of a lot better, the rest of the industry would follow. But it's really weird. It's weird. The whole thing is strange. And then going back to gaming with what you're doing, I find that's really odd too, because there was one point in time where it felt like Wizards of the Coast really got it, that they were clearly, they had their finger on the pulse of what was great for every market that they had, and then it all went to crap. And that's the thing that's strange to me. I mean, do you see this where when they say, or do you feel this way? Because this is how I feel when they say that we need this product for this audience and this and that, and we have to kind of get away from the prior audience, that's like turning around and saying, yeah, because our prior audience is so horrible, we have to distance ourselves from them and get this new audience instead. And we'll do that. It's almost like grade school mentality. Like you're trying to be friends with the cool kids, but you were kind of like an outcast who was friends with the outcast kids. And you're like, oh, them, like that. I don't like, I just pity those guys. I'm not really, they're not my friends, And
Well,
it's just a really shitty thing to do.
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. If you said you liked the kind of Dungeons and Dragons that was in that image that we had up earlier, then I could understand why you get beat up. Let's be, I could understand that. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what it is. It's like the people who are in charge. It's like you said, it's like a clique. They want to be in with the cool kids, and they're told that this is what the cool people like, and that's what it is.
It's so strange. I mean, that's obviously how things happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's why I always wondered, do the sales figures back it up? And if they don't,
sales have been terrible.
Yeah, if they don't, why keep going down that path? Do you have any insight into why they keep going down that path, even though the sales are terrible?
I don't know. They keep doubling down. I mean, it's like comics. There's a vocal minority who I have questions if they actually spend money on the products. But there's a vocal minority who like these things. And, if they were going to spend money, why not make their own modules for them? Why not make certain comic titles that cater to them? But you don't have to change everything. And there's some weird, it's almost like a fetish. It's like, okay, we need more women reading comic books. So let's take Thor and make him a woman who has cancer.
Yeah, instead of
Yeah.
making a new title that would
Yeah.
have characters and storylines that appeal.
Yeah.
Which is even what they used to do for every other kind of genre and any other kind of story or any other kind of audience. Like
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't just do a sea change of a character and a story. You were like, okay, let's make this kind of, if a horror book is maybe what will appeal to people, let's do a character that's more towards that.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, no, all of our stuff now is going to be having a horror bend to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the 70s in comics, there were so many more genres than there are now, and if you go to the 70s and 80s in tabletop gaming, there were like spy tabletop games, World War II tabletop games, you have horror like Call of Cthulhu, you have all sorts of different genres so that you could pick the one you like. And, for whatever reason in the 80s, they cut everything down to pretty much just capes and cowls, which was a horrible decision. And tabletop gaming, it all became, I shouldn't say all, but the majority is like this fantasy type setting. And then the problem is, once you decide that, okay, now we're going to change it, well, you only have that one thing left. It's not like before where you could put a little more emphasis on one genre as opposed to the other. Like if Westerns are popular, okay, you put a little more money into your Westerns. But now it's like you got to change the whole thing. And that's kind of where we're at with gaming. So there's a pretty vibrant indie scene where, like for example, I've got a AD&D 1E version of this book that's available. So AD&D 1E was, I think, 76, 77. So for almost 50 years, people have been using that same rule set, and they'll just make their own stories. And, officially they put out modules for it for 5-10 years. And then now it's still continuing in the indie community.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what it seems like across the board with everything is that that is the only way I think we get out of where we're at.
Yeah.
Is the indie side of stuff. And
and
kind of that whole, whether it's crowdfunding or direct to consumer or utilizing different social media to get the word out there.
Yep. And the only downside with that is if you want that top quality, if you want comics to look like what the Image guys were doing in 92, that costs money. And as an indie creator, you don't always have that money, which unfortunately makes things like Kickstarters necessary. But the quality there, the desires there, I think, if somehow people knew there were these vibrant scenes of people making great comics and people making great games, but they're doing it on their own. I think there would be a lot more money available to spend on these kind of products, especially like you're saying, like how many people buy new comics versus old comics? I'm pretty sure most comic shops will tell you they make more money selling back issues than they do on most of the new stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's what I hear from the shop owners I talk to all the time.
Yeah.
Is that they're always saying that they'll make more even when they, not just at their shop, but even if they go to a show, they get more from the people digging through a $1 bin or a 50-cent bin or whatever than they do from not just the new stuff, but also the higher priced comics too. That people just want to go through and dive into the older stuff and will just end up getting a stack based on the covers or whatever because the story looked fun or it just looked appealing. Whereas the stuff that's being made now apparently doesn't have that same appeal.
No, and that's the thing. Somehow that word has to get out. Like, I have a lot of comic people on my channel as well as gamers, and a lot of the gamers are actually kind of interested because when they were younger, they were really into comics, and so I've had people, who watch the show and they say, "Oh, I haven't read a comic in 30 years, but that one looks kind of cool. I'm going to go buy that." And that's sort of what we have to tap into. I think as a society, we fractured so much and we're all in like our own little bubbles of things that we like. So we're not always aware of what's going on in other, if I like fantasy, I might not know what's going on in sci-fi, that sort of thing. But the more you can get the word out there, I think the better it is for everyone, because at some point people are going to say, yeah, I would like to read a comic again. There's just nothing out there for me. And say, oh, well, maybe this thing I see is for me.
Tabletop gaming in particular seems to
Mhm.
do really well on Kickstarter.
Yes.
Is that something that maybe informed your decision to putting this second chance campaign on Kickstarter? And if so, or if not, would you recommend more tabletop gaming people that either want to purchase or want to create a project that they go to Kickstarter for that? Has your experience been good with crowdfunding on there?
Well, I think I did a particularly poor job of getting the word out about my first one last year. So I think that regardless of where you're putting it, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, wherever, you have to drive an audience there. You need to get people excited about it. You need to get them to go there. Or even if you're selling on your own site, the difference between Kickstarter and some of the other sites is with Kickstarter specifically, there are people who will go there and search for new gaming things to buy. And they'll just go and they'll look, oh, that looks neat. And, and then they'll back that. Whereas like Indiegogo is pretty much unsearchable. Like people will never find your stuff unless you give them a direct link to it. So I would say Kickstarter has that advantage. And would I recommend people do it? Yes. But I don't think, you can't just put a project up and then expect it to work. I did not start advertising my last campaign early enough. I think I started really advertising it like about a month or so beforehand or less. And it really, like this time I did 2.5 months. I got better at figuring out like where the ads should go and what kind of ads. So I spent a little money on that. I reached out to more people to go on more shows to spread the word. I kind of figured out like, well, what type of people would really like this kind of game versus others. And, so far I think I had like 42 backers on the first one, and I've got 134 right now on this one. So, I'm getting close to 4 times the number. So part of it is you just got to take your lumps, I think, and you just got to do one and then figure out what you did right and what you did wrong and where you can improve the next time. I don't mind these kind of second chance campaigns because, if you're getting close to going to print, why not, try to pick up some people that you missed the first time. For me, I'm trying to get more money for art. But I mean, for me, it works, and I think the next time I launch one, it's going to be even better because now I have a much larger, not database, but like people who are interested. I've got, nearly 1,000 emails on here. I sold a VIP package for $3 that added an extra adventure module and some posters and whatnot. And so I've got like 180 people from that. So between that, like I have a much better idea of who my audience is and who I'm trying to, or who's most likely to buy my stuff. So next time I'll have a much better base to start with. And then, hopefully I'll do, maybe I can do double the money.
Yeah, I think that's the key to a lot of this stuff with crowdfunding is it's a slow build. And there's the link if you guys want to check it out. People that oftentimes, if it's their first one ever and they've never experienced how to run a crowdfunder, let alone how to fulfill a crowdfunder, I say sometimes it's kind of the worst thing that could happen is that the crowdfunder blows up and it becomes this like massive, it's 500 people you got to fulfill, 1,000 people you got to fulfill. And you completely, because you're not aware of your logistics at that point. You think you are, but you never have a solid grasp on them. I'd say you need to do at least 5 campaigns until you really become aware. And even then, there's always going to be some pitfalls here or there. That every campaign has unique ones. But yeah, starting small with the crowdfunders and building up along the way is always the best way to go about it. It's kind of just the best way to go about anything, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with you definitely have had a bigger backing this time around. You're close now to 12,000. You're at 11,917. It looks like. Let me see here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I picked up another backer while I was here.
Yeah, so that's great. And if you're watching the show and you've backed this or you've checked it out, thank you guys for doing so. If not, you still got 14 days to do so. Are you going to have this in, what did they call it? Late pledges? Is that what they call it on Kickstarter?
Yes. Well, assuming it works this time, unlike last time, there I will have late pledges as well until we're ready to go print, and then I have to. Or actually, there's some. I have to see if I can shut parts of it off and not others. There are some digital only options, which is kind of popular for people overseas, and that I could keep that going indefinitely if I wanted to. But I'll have to see if I have to turn the whole thing off or if I could just do parts.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at mine, you can do parts of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Like you have to each perk that you put up, each reward, whatever it is, you have to select whether or not you want it to qualify for late pledges or not. And then you specify the pricing of how much it would be, whether it's a little more or it's the same or whatever for
Okay.
late pledges. Yeah, it's not quite as easy as Indiegogo's in demand feature, where you just select in demand and then the whole campaign goes in demand and you could do nothing to it and everything will just stay the way it is. It's just extending the campaign. You got to like retool and purposefully go into it with what you want to be in the late pledges round and what you don't. So it's a little more confusing, but you can customize it a little better, if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I know with Indiegogo now they did a relaunch, right? I think it's because they got bought out. I forget the name of the company. So I'm really curious as to how they work out and what it's going to be like on that platform now. I wonder if people are going to have the same problems with shadow banning. I wonder if they're going to have the same problems that there's been. I wonder if there's going to be any benefits or whatever. The searchability hopefully is easier. I guess we'll see.
I mean, that's the real thing, right? Had they not screwed that up and then the shadow banning, Indiegogo, well, for a while was, a very fine alternative to Kickstarter. But there's no use for me to being on that platform if people can't randomly find my project.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's, and I don't understand how it could have gotten so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It really seems like something had to happen where there was some kind of coding issue, because if it didn't seem to have a rhyme or a reason in terms of just targeting certain people, because it would have targeted a lot of other people who didn't get targeted.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the hell it could have possibly been. I know there were rumors for a year or so leading up to this buyout that the new owner of Indiegogo, whoever they are, again, I forget their name. I think they come from the gaming space though.
Maybe. I can't quite remember.
But yeah, it's I know there were rumors leading up that they were having difficulties and whatever, and people just thought the whole platform itself was going to go under. So I don't know how it's going to be. I'm looking forward to checking it out and seeing if they did make any adjustments or improvements, hopefully, and we'll see how it is, because I haven't minded using them. I still prefer people to go directly to the alternate site to buy stuff, but I've preferred Indiegogo so far over using Kickstarter and using Fund My Comic. And I don't know if that's just because I've been used to the interface more than those other two, but there's things I like about Indiegogo that they were doing in terms of just the interface and the adjustments and the add-ons and whatever, that still I found like Kickstarter was a very close second. And Fund My Comics still, it's very new and it still has a way to go. But I really liked Indiegogo, so I hope that they just got better and cleared up some
Hopefully.
of the stuff that was really dragging them down.
Yeah, although even that is potentially dangerous because think of all the other crowdfunding sites that are Zoop or whatever that was called, and then I saw like 2 or 3 other ones. But the problem is the more crowdfunding sites there are, the less people, as more people go to use them, the less people will see your project somewhere, unless you're going to do like something on all the different sites. And then it's a problem because it looked, if I got to get 50 people here and 100 people there, maybe I got 1,000 people overall looking at my book, but if it's spread out so much, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, yeah, and it's tough to even maintain quality control in some way because I've noticed that when I've had campaigns on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and Fund My Comic, that I got to make concessions on whatever platform it is. I can't have them all looking and doing the same stuff because they all behave differently.
Yeah.
So it really is like you do have to pick your battles with it. But yeah, it's an interesting time in terms of all this stuff because a lot of it's still, even though it's been out now for I think about 15 or so years with crowdfunding going on, it still is this relatively new thing. And I find mainstream wise, it still really hasn't broken through. Even though there's been some really big campaigns, crowdfunding really still isn't this thing. There's this kind of like a stigma behind it where it's like a GoFundMe sort of a deal, and it's really not that.
Yeah.
And I know that this isn't the vast majority of people, but I know that obviously there are campaign managers who go AWOL. And I think like there's Kickstarters I backed in like 2015 that I still haven't received things from, and I don't even know what the hell it is at this point anymore.
Isn't
but
Rob
yeah.
Liefeld still
Yeah,
unfulfilled on one from 2013?
I think so. Yeah, so there's stuff like that doesn't obviously do it any favors. But I still think there's a way, or at least there should be a way, where it becomes more of a mainstream sort of thing. I can't.
Well, I think it is slowly. We've seen various. We've seen like Keanu Reeves. He had one for his comic book. I think was it not Black Mask, Boom, or somebody was one of those companies.
Yeah, Boom did it. Yeah.
Boom. I see there is a Mark Miller. He just he's got about 61,000 from his Conquered Volumes 104, which is just up there. So I think it's becoming a little better. And one of the dirty problems with the crowdfunding is like, let's say I make a website and it's my very first product, very first game, very first comic, whatever, and I put it on my website to sell. A lot of people are going to hesitate to buy something on there because I don't have any track record. Am I going to steal their credit card numbers? Are they never going to see whatever they buy?
Yep.
But using one of these crowdfunder sites gives you that veneer of not authenticity, of that people are going to get their stuff, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like vanity retailing, vanity distribution, the way vanity publishing was. Like, you go through and it just gives you that air more of professionalism than.
Yeah. But I think as more people use it, even Hasbro, they crowdfunded that ZHAO Joe compendium from I think it was last year. So we might see this become more viable, especially in the realm of like, I think that there's a lot of companies who are like, I don't know if this would sell or not, but maybe it would, so we'll put it on Kickstarter, so then they're not out the money for the production costs.
Yep.
So hopefully it'll become more mainstream. And I think too, at some point, if you're if you like comics, but you've read everything that Lee and Kirby put out, and you're just hard up for stuff, at some point you got to go indie, or you're never going to find anything that you like. And I think with gaming, it's the same thing. It's like, well, I like the system that was popular 20 years ago. They're not making anything new for it. I don't like any of these new systems. Oh, well, here's all this new content for that old system that you liked.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think that's the only way to move forward in this space. Because it's not going to get back to the way it was. I know a lot of people want that distribution system back. I
No.
know that people, even what I was talking about before about cutting the lines down, that's not going to happen. I know it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. No one in that corporate structure wants to hear. Wait, you want to axe the product line by like 50% to more than
Yeah.
that? So none of that is going to happen, even if it makes perfect sense. But I think the only way that we do get out of this is we got to keep pushing forward, and hopefully people are patient enough with all of the the trials and tribulations that a lot of indie creators are going to be going through, trying
Yeah.
to navigate uncharted waters.
And I think part of it too is we're at a weird place in history where, let's say you wanted to make comics like it was again when we were kids. You just couldn't, because the places, kids do not go to the same places that we went to. We
Yeah.
were unsupervised after school. We just went to the candy shop, to the convenience store, to the gas station, to wherever. Man, if a kid walked alone into a gas station, like, how fast child protective services would be called. So like those kind of things just don't exist, and they have to sort of figure out, well, where are kids? Where can we get this stuff in front of them? They got to manage the costs. Like Neon from Clownfish, he posted today there was a GI Joe figure on sale, just like one of the little figures, for $33. Like, those things were $3, I remember, in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now,
Even
okay,
with inflation, it's nothing
yeah,
close.
yeah. The problem is, a lot of these hobbies were based on being affordable and somewhat disposable. Like, if we can't get it back to that goal where, like, you just pocket change, the money under your sofa cushions can buy a comic. If we can't get back to that, it's going to be a tough sell.
Yeah. And the only way that we can get the pricing structure down is to have better distribution, because you
Yeah.
need those economies of scale. And it's like one problem feeds the other.
Yeah.
And it seems like no one really wants to try to address those big problems that
I mean,
could be smaller. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's headed that way anytime soon.
I do think in some way, in some form, somebody is going to snatch up a lot of these indie projects that you would see on, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and they're going to reprint them somehow. Now, I don't know what form that takes. I don't know if it would be in a store. I don't know if it would be, be repurposing for a foreign audience, or they're going to take it and make like anthologies. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be 15 years from now. But at some point, somebody is going to figure out how to make it work. And there's going to be all this content that very few people have seen. So I think it's pretty fertile ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that really is another path that we could consider, because you have all this stuff that would be done, and it's just about
Yeah.
repackaging it to get to a larger audience.
Yeah.
And the only problem would be is, does the distribution system or the retail pipeline, does that stay around long enough to wait to see for that to happen?
I don't know.
Yeah, because that's, and even just rights situations, because that was always something I had wanted to do with Alterna books eventually, is put out something that was literally called Alterna Comics, and have it as an anthology that featured, a horror driven anthology, a sci-fi driven, a superhero driven, whatever it would be. And it would have like the equivalent of 3 or 4 issues per book. And that would be something that we put out with Newsstand. And Newsstand was a complete disaster. Getting in that space was a mess, and then the rights issues of being able to do something like that, because various creators, for one reason or another, would part, and that made that even more of a mess. So it's like we want, in this space, at least I can say for comics, we seem to want the ideals of everything, like creator ownership. The creators
Mhm.
get the maximum amount of the money earned. We have the widest distribution possible, all this kind of stuff. And the publisher still somehow makes money as well. And then there's also still room for the publisher to leverage these properties and these formats and merchandise and all this other stuff, and make it work. And so far, no one really has been able to make it work across the board.
Yep.
Like people have managed to make it work maybe for themselves and the stuff that they create. But as soon as you get like another property or whatever involved, or you have a publishing umbrella, it starts to become really dicey. And
Yeah.
that's the thing that's been so weird with the comic space, is that we don't really have the distribution pipeline. Like, we're beggars and we're trying to be choosers. And it's one of these things where if we had this like 80s pipeline of newsstand and the secondary comic book market with the independent retail stores, that was like the perfect thing where you had the new stuff coming out that the newsstand was returnable. So they basically could just say, yeah, put it on the shelf, and there wasn't a glut of it. So it would go there, and whatever would sell, and what didn't, a lot of the time got bought up by these independent retailers. And these secondary markets became the place where, okay, you paid a little bit more. You paid a premium if you missed that issue from a couple months ago, but you still had this pipeline that just kept working to getting the new stuff out, and getting the stuff out that catered more towards either the market that missed the first time around, or the collector market that wanted like that pristine copy or whatever it was when that started coming around. Now it really has turned more into this very niche type thing where it's really strange to see comics out and about in the
Mhm.
world outside of a comic shop. And then even if you do, it's not really the stuff you would see at a comic shop. It's like that Dollar Tree situation, or
Yep.
I don't know what was going on with the gas station where you saw comics. Someone else had said that they saw comics at a Circle K, and I think it kind of turns into this weird, like, oh, I guess these are new. I don't know. Do they still make comics? Like, I think the mass majority of people are that are not plugged in
Yep.
probably don't think that they make comics anymore.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. And I mean, to some extent, we still have leftover from Comics Code Authority, where comics were never allowed to grow up. So, one reason manga is so popular in Japan is because there's stuff for adults, whereas traditionally, comics didn't have that. Now, I would say we have some of that, and if anything, at least in the indie scene, it's maybe the opposite problem, where there's not enough entry points for younger kids. But it's something somebody has to figure out. I'm disappointed in Disney because they had all those Mickey Mouse titles that they should have had Marvel publishing just to get kids in the industry. And maybe like Spider Ham would have an adventure with Mickey Mouse or
I
something.
don't know how they haven't done anything like that yet. That just writes
right.
itself.
And I mean, and then that would sort of age you up into the next when you have sort of like New Mutants level or Power Pack level or age level characters. And then they age up into X-Men. And then I don't know, whatever comes after that. But
yeah, well,
for
even
some
just
reason, nobody's doing it.
Even just the format of the books, the graphic novel, the trade, that was a perfect price point and a perfect size to tell out of continuity, more mature type stories.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be graphically mature or gratuitously mature.
Yeah.
Just like the subject matter, the themes, the
Yeah.
art level, the writing, all of that. And instead, it just became, here's another vehicle to repackage, reformat the same slop that we put out prior months. And then eventually people learn that's what you're doing. So then they stop buying single issues, and the single issues have to be selling well in order to justify a trade being produced. So it turns into, well, now that doesn't really happen, but yet we're still going to put out a trade. The whole industry doesn't seem to make any more sense. They're not viewing this is great for this kind of market, this kind of audience, and that this kind of story, this kind of format would be great for that kind of audience. It's a
Exactly.
very strange, like, I don't know, man. Like, there's days where, and I know I said this when our show ended last time, that I've been making comics for 20 years too long, and I've only been making comics for 19 years. And that's how I feel on some days, where it's I've been making them for far too long compared to the actual amount of time I've been making them, because that's how exhausting the industry is. And even
Yeah.
though I'm kind of outside of all of that still, it's still like I'm still like that one step outside of it, and I still get affected by it, of what happens in the mainstream regard to the retail, the distribution, the publishing. But just even as someone who loves comics, it's so sad just seeing that industry have this slow, weird death. Like, it's been this, like, it's been in such a horrible, like, hospice-y type state for like 10 to 15 years. And you're just like, please God, just take them already. Just end the suffering. And it's sad to put it like that. And it's like maybe a little
Yeah.
morbid or too I don't know, too much of an exaggeration. But that's how I feel about it. Maybe that's how other people feel about it too. But just looking at the state of how it used to be, and the quality that was out, the creativity that was out, the standards that were set, and now the shadow of its former self that it's in now, it makes sense if we expected, like, the one generation from the 90s to keep doing everything the same pace and the same way they were doing it.
Yeah.
That would make sense because they're way past their prime, and, obviously that's not gonna happen. It's like a sports franchise. If you still expect, like, the 55-year-olds to play the game the same way as they did when they were 25, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But we have new generations, new creative generations that have come since then, and it just seems like generation after generation, it's just gone worse and worse and worse. And you get to a point where it feels like there's no end in sight. And I hate to sound depressing about the situation, but man, it's a weird thing. And all I could say is I really hope that the indie side of everything gets its stuff together, myself included in that, because the sooner we get our stuff together, the sooner we can start firing on all cylinders, the better for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, the thing is, what's going on in comics is not solely isolated to comics. Most of publishing industries are having similar problems. So I hate to say that that's a good thing, but if you really think about it, words with images isn't going anywhere. Just somehow
Yeah.
it needs to be repackaged into something that gets in front of people and that's affordable for the average person for entertainment, which is, I've always said high-low model. Like, they need to have, like, the cheap stuff, like the dollar store stuff, Superman, whatever, like the cheapest newsprint you could find. I'm sure if they were printing 20,000 issues of it, you could get it nice and cheap. And then,
Oh yeah, if they're printing the large amount of numbers, totally. Yeah.
and then, you say, okay, well, if you want to we have this higher quality version with superior white paper and better colors or whatever you want to call it. And then, okay. And then you sell like a premium product with it. And maybe it's got exclusive stuff from the artists and the writers and blah, blah, blah. There's ways to have a product that meets the average person's need and still have a premium, I guess you'd say, product that's for like the hardcore fans that gives them everything that they want. Why aren't they doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly why we're trying to do that with the remastered line with
Yeah.
the Alterna stuff, where our stuff on the main line is more affordable. It's on newsprint, all that kind of stuff, and then the remastered line is a limited run and has no ads and upgraded everything else, and so then that's a higher priced item, but not so pricey. It's not like it's like $30 an issue. It's like
Yeah.
$8 an issue. You know,
Yeah.
so it's strange. I don't know why that is. It's again, these are common sense type things, and they're not done. There is something I want to touch upon here before
Mhm.
we close out. I am not used to the restream stuff telling me when there's memberships and super chats and whatnot, so I really apologize about this, Spicer. Thank you so much, Spicer. If you're still around in the chat,
Ooh.
thank you for gifting 10 memberships. I just saw this from maybe, I don't know, maybe an hour ago at this point. So thank you so much. And if you did receive a membership from Spicer, a gifted membership, enjoy your stay. You got that for a month. But yeah, so it's interesting, but we'll see how it shakes out. You keep doing what you're doing. I know you're in the realm of indie gaming with the
Working
tabletop
on it.
stuff. So
Eventually, I'm going to get to publish some comics. Before I work on the sequel to that. There's not a comic based on this, but there's another comic that I've been wanting to do, and maybe I might have an artist who would be willing to work on it. So we'll have to see how that works out.
yeah. Well, hopefully, man, that'll be cool. That'd be cool to see you do something. Especially, you got some good ideas within that Empire of the Undying Sun.
Oh, thank you.
That would, really be cool for you to take into your own hands how you would play that story out and incorporate that. And you could always make that as a supplemental comic series or something
Yeah.
to the gaming.
Yeah. I do plan on doing that, but since I haven't made any comics first, I want to do something before to work out all the kinks, and then when I'm confident in my ability to write the story and hopefully draw it myself, then I'll be all in on it.
Awesome, man. Sounds good. Well, you have to let me know when that happens. All right. So we're going to wind down. Hey, that seems to be the timetable for a lot of stuff. Better 5 years than never, though.
That's true. That's true.
So before we part ways, anything you want to say? Anything you want to direct people to? Let them know where to find you.
Yeah. In about half an hour on my channel, we are continuing Spook Month. I've got Kat Rocha coming on. We're going to talk gods of Egypt, cults, and witchcraft.
Oh, very nice. Awesome.
So that, and the other show I do this Saturday is at the Nerd Council of Doom on YouTube. Go there. I do it, the show with a guy named the Dungeon Delver and another one, the Dungeon Minister, who, yes, is a real priest. And we talk about gaming, comics, TV movies, sort of the periphery of the nerd world.
Very nice. Awesome.
And we pretend to be wizards who are going to take over the world. So,
well, you guys can go to Yang Yan Zhao's channel on YouTube to check out all of that. And as far as I'm concerned, you guys can go to alternacomics.com, pick up. It came out on Wednesday, number 22 and 23. Those are currently in pre-order mode, but the pre-order period is going to end pretty much around sometime the first week of November, because these are going to be shipping out at the end of November. So these are going to be shipping out very, very soon. We're going to get these in the in-house printing and get them sent out, hopefully to arrive to you guys in December. So other than that, Remastered Wave 2, that's literally maybe a week or two away from those arriving here, and then that's going to fulfill. So if you back the Remastered Wave 2, you're going to get those very, very soon. And Remastered Wave 3, we ended the pre-order period yesterday, so they're $8 each now instead of $7. And there's just 2 copies left of each of those 13 issues. So if you do want to check that out, go to alternacomics.com/pre-order for all of your pre-order needs at Alterna. All right. Thank you guys so much, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Yang, thank you so much, man, for coming on here and having this conversation with me. Appreciate it. And go check out Empire of the Undying Sun on Kickstarter. Very, very close to the $12,000 mark. 134 backers on board with 14 days left. The links are in the description of the show. Until then, everybody have a great night and an even better tomorrow. We'll see you guys soon. All the best.
Night, everyone.